Hello and welcome to SimCast, the Higher Education Simulation Podcast. My name's Tony Jeremy and I'm joined by my regular co-host, Dr. Lawrence Hill.
Hello everyone and welcome back to SimCast. I am indeed Lawrence Hill and it's great to have you with us. Today we are joined by Craig Dores. Hang on a minute, Craig. How do I pronounce your surname?
Like sliding, like closing.
Doors.
So really should have checked that before we started recording.
You've also rehearsed that before. It's not the first time.
It's not the first time, yeah. It's often in busy waiting rooms when someone calls me in, or like at an airport when they go, is Mr. Dores there? And then obviously all your friends mock you for the rest of the time.
But question.
Right, great. So I'm glad that I've contributed to that. Cheers.
That never gets confused with your first name, does it? Because I have the problem where my surname is Jeremy.
Yeah,
but it's not. It's Jeremy.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right, Jeremy. Let's go with that.
Not that gets me. Anyway, Craig works in an NHS simulation centre, the clinical simulation centre at County Durham. He's an NHS Simulation Technician and has a background as a British Army combat medic, which is, I guess, a little bit unusual for a simulation technician. He's the creator. Go on.
I was going to say I'm one of the rarer breeds where
you got a clinical background.
Technician, not a technical technician, so I don't know what anything's called.
Well, we'll have to dive into that a little bit later. So Craig is the creator of the SimTech Podcast. So if you haven't listened to that, please go and have a listen. We'll put a link in the description below. Founder of the National Simulation Technician Awards and leading voice in building community and professional identity for simulation technicians across the UK. I think we can award you with that title, Craig. A very warm welcome to the SimCast.
That's quite an introduction. Leading voice, I'm never going to lead. I'm never going to live with myself now.
I think when you stick your head above the parapet and create a podcast, it kind of comes with the territory a bit, because you're doing something in the UK which not many other simulation technicians are doing, and creating a voice for that community on a national platform. And I mean, we'll probably dive into it a little bit later, but when you create a podcast, there is this hidden kind of responsibilities that come with you just creating something because you think there's a space that kind of needs filling to a degree.
Or that you perceive a gap that needs to be filling. And that was the case for us. But I'm really interested to know, Craig, off the top of the bat, why do you do what you do? Why did you create the SimTech Podcast?
Well, it was actually off the back of an episode that you did with Dan Blood. So there's a fair few simulation podcasts out there, and they're mostly clinical orientated. And most of the podcasts will generally give a nod to the simulation technician role. But there's almost none. There might be one or two out there that are dedicated to the technician role. So I kind of saw a little bit of a gap in the market, as it were. And honestly, I've never been a great communicator. I've never been great at presenting. I've always felt quite nervous, but it hasn't made me shy away from self-development and making myself a little bit better at the stuff that I'm weak at. And audio has always been one of my things that I've never really been comfortable with. When you see a waveform or you see a soundboard, and understanding how it all works, and all just kind of led into this project where it was almost a little bit of professional development. Actually, let's dig into this and let's see where it goes. And you probably felt it as well, is like trying to do your first episode. It's quite daunting, putting yourself out there, making yourself very, very vulnerable to what you think is going to be critique. You can go, I'm going to get hammered in the comments.
Have you had any critique, actually? Because we did. When we started, we got a bit of critique.
Only a little bit, but it was useful.
Yeah, no, actually, most people have been really supportive, and I think it was just in my own head. And people like, oh yeah, they're going to hate it. You have this massive imposter syndrome thing going on. They're going, I'm not a podcaster. I know nothing about it. But until you start, and if you're looking for perfection when you start, you're never going to get it. So you start off quite raw, and you're fumbling your way through most of the time. And even now, it's weird thinking that I am a podcaster, but it's weird when you say it aloud.
I think the natural format of that long form conversation in a podcast affords you the ability to be a little bit rough around the edges.
Yes.
It gives it part of its charm.
I agree. I think we still fumble. Like I fumbled your surname, right? But, episode 1 or 2 or 3, that would have felt like a complete disaster. But actually, in conversation, it's the sort of thing that happens. But when you're kind of presenting it like a thing, it feels a bit
for me
difficult.
If it's too polished, it loses that personal approach to, I don't know. Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? When I listen to podcasts, and I often listen to them on my commute, that's probably what a lot of people will do. You kind of you feel like you're involved in the conversation, don't you? It feels a lot more personal than I don't know, watching a television program or something like that. And part of that is that just a little bit rough around the edges.
Yeah. But I think you get to know them as well, don't you? You get to know your podcasting hosts and their personalities. And I don't know if you ever feel this, but when you go to a conference, people talk to you. And sometimes they feel like they know you a little bit better than what you're struggling to remember the name, and they're talking to you as if they know you.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of that. I mean, we started to get a little bit of that because SimCast has gathered a bit of momentum in the UK, which is great, and a little bit beyond as well. But I guess I just want to zero in on something you said, which piqued my interest, which was more in your introduction actually about the identity. So that this was about kind of celebrating the identity of simulation technicians. Identity studies are very interesting to me. I did a doctorate exploring the professional identity of paramedics. So I guess I'd just be really interested to hear what you think about how the simulation technician identity is emerging and evolving.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys feel it, but there's definitely been a shift in the technician role, especially over the last few years, especially with a few, can I say, champions in the role, leading the charge, as it were. Sometimes it's easy to pigeonhole us and just say, they're just techs. They sit behind and they twiddle and they do a little bit more. But recently, we've been looking into job descriptions and banding and seeing where all this kind of evolves for, and I feel like it was a lot of like shouting into the depths and no one really listening. So I think more recently we started to take a little bit ownership ourselves. We felt like maybe people weren't listening, and we've just gone, you know what? So what if people are not listening? Let's just do everything ourselves. So these champions now. We're just looking after ourselves and creating this amazing community of technicians.
And I wonder as well, like, have you stumbled across or even completed the evaluation of ASPE's professional development framework, the draft one they've got on their website? So nice to see on there, front and center, as part of these 5 core streams of work within simulation that technical kind of prowess is actually really fully recognized in their professional development framework. What were your thoughts on that, if you've seen it?
Yeah, I mean, that's I don't want to embarrass him too much. He knows who he is. He's an avid follower. So hello, Chris. He's been leading the charge. He's we'll call him an ex-tech, but he's tech through and through, and he's been banging on the ASPE door for what seems like years.
Yeah,
and creating these little projects to get techs a seat at the table.
It's such a varied role, though, isn't it? Yeah. And particularly with background, we were talking before we started recording how with your background being more clinical, which is maybe an unusual trajectory into techs. Importantly, I'd say in the UK, because that's not always the way it is. And I was listening to an episode that you did. Is it Stephen Ford, who was a paramedic by background in Chicago? We've spoken to the Sim Geeks, who've both got clinical backgrounds. I think both of them have, haven't they, paramedics?
Yes, yeah, they have. Yeah.
And so I think globally there's a very varied trajectory in terms of how people get into this role. But then once you're in, it's kind of, we don't want to tie you all with the same brush because you've got so many different skill sets. And with the advancement of the role because of new technologies and things like that, it's difficult to try and put.
Yeah, and when you go to a conference and you meet a tech, it's really difficult. And I know I shouldn't. You can't tell if they're a band 3 or a band 6. You're talking to them, they're like, they seem really experienced, and then later on they'll say they're an apprentice. And sometimes it really blows you away of the range and the spectrum that all these techs are on. And the little part of me thinks because the managers and leaders that are writing these job descriptions, they don't fully understand what it takes and what goes into it. And I suppose we're a little bit to blame that we don't really stick to our job descriptions too much. We're very much like, yes, men and women, we'll just, if someone comes to us and gives us a job, we'll go, yeah, we can do that. And off we go, and we'll do it, regardless of what's in our job description.
Asking for forgiveness rather than permission.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah.
Do you see the role of the simulation technician in an NHS organisation being different from that of one in higher education, for example?
Almost, I feel like the role is almost a bit of a spiritual role. We get labelled as a technician. I almost like the Americans' pronouns for it almost. The operators, the specialists. Because a technician kind of implies that you fix things, and it's a little bit awkward for me because I don't fix things. If something breaks, I'll reach out to a supplier and I'll get them to come and fix it because I don't know what's going on inside a sim man really to fix it, especially when it's probably 100 grand's worth of kit. I don't want to be in there fiddling these things.
No, of course not.
And I think it's just a little bit misleading. But again, managers and leaders, they see this technician role, and
that's so interesting. So we had one of our simulation technicians on the podcast previously, Josh Johnson, and what I think the kind of overriding message that came out for me was that it's a really humane role. Like it's really about connecting
the allure
people.
Initially is the technology, actually,
but actually it's about connecting people with systems and enabling learning to take place, and that. Yeah, that is a really specialist. I think you're right. I think the language, we've talked about the language of simulation before, and it's important that the description is right in order to facilitate recognition of the complex work that technicians do. I can see why you'd want to take that back in some way and to increase the visibility and celebrate we'll talk about diversity. Like the backgrounds that people come into the simulation technician role. We're going to be speaking to the Maudsley in South London, who have a mental health simulation centre, and some of their technicians have got like arts and humanities backgrounds. There's drama graduates who are some of the technicians in the background there. And that just speaks to the diversity as well. I mean, what else are you coming across in your conversations? Because you're talking to a lot of people, right? So what are the other backgrounds you see in coming in?
No I say this, no SimTech ever leaves college, university, school saying, look, I want to be a SimTech. They just don't even know that role exists. It's a little bit too bespoke, but the ideal candidate participant for the job would be someone who's got a little bit of clinical and a little bit of technical and interest in technology. But I think most of it's opportunistic. They've seen a role, they read it, think, that's a bit of me. But you're right. The best technicians, they will do a little bit of acting. They'll love going in there.
For me, it's the character trait, isn't it? It's that what you said, an interest, a willingness to learn, because we've, our technical team exclusively do not have clinical backgrounds. But once they've been in the role and they work with the people, you can see their knowledge base on certain aspects of, they haven't had a healthcare education per se, so that it still may be a little bit superficial in places, but you can see their learning, that there is a willingness to learn, a willingness to help as well, and that kind of.
It's finding these transferable skills that you can identify on a bit of paper and be like, yeah, these would fit. But again. You get a lot if you ever interview. If you can feel if they're going to fit in, because it takes a special kind of character to come in and understand simulation and be a simulation enthusiast. And what works really well for us at the moment is apprenticeships and band threes going in, because when these band threes get a little bit of a taste, to get the experience, it's really easy for them to walk into a band 5 or a band 4 job, because they've now got SimTech experience, which, let's face it, it's gold dust. Most people that go tech interviews might be from an IT background. They might understand computers, but they don't understand everything else. They've got no clinical background. Or there might be, for instance, people coming in from the arts and crafts and that kind of world, people that can act. I mean, how rare is that for a simulation to have someone with acting skills and being able to teach or even makeup, makeup artistry, those kind of things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so valuable.
Yeah, 100%. So that diversity of background and the complex and the interesting things that technicians do, presumably was part of the motivation behind the National Simulation Technician Awards and a kind of a celebration of some of that. So tell us what it is. Educate us about what it is and why and who and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, it started with so I do a lot of different type of work, and I keep nominating myself for loads of awards, and I've been shortlisted for like 4 national awards, but I've never got over the line to win.
Okay.
And I find it really frustrating.
What a better way to do it than set up your own awards.
No, I win every single award.
Yeah.
But what I found, trying to explain it to a panel of non-simulation enthusiasts, what we do, it felt like they didn't understand simulation. I'm against big national projects, people working in blood bank and all these other places that get a lot of traction and get a lot of money. So off the back of that, I was like, right, why don't we create something for simulation technicians? As you can tell, there's a little bit of don't want to go as far as a movement within the simulation technician.
There definitely is, and there's been a couple, and like you said, a couple of key players who've really got to grips with, okay, this needs to be a national movement, and we can, once we get some momentum behind it, you're going to have a tipping point, aren't you?
Yeah, and it's all about. Someone said, I won't embarrass them, that we're doing things for techs by techs, so we're taking ownership of this, and it just felt like, actually, what better way to get some recognition for people's hard work? Going out there and let's show it off a little bit. Let's shine a bit of a spotlight on the work that these people that are normally seen working behind the scenes. Let's drag them out of their dark little rooms and get them on stage and give them an award.
So what categories do you have in the for the awards?
So when I first created it, I was going to go off of the ASPE framework. So there was things like scholarship, technology, leadership, and all these. And a little part of me was worrying that I won't get enough attention on scholarship and things like that. So I started thinking about, actually, let's make them a little bit more interesting, a little bit more marketable, as it were. So we've gone for a couple of wide open general awards. We've got SimTech of the Year. So that's where people can apply for their text. They've done a great job this year. And because it's the inaugural launch of the awards, I've gone back 3 years. So if they've done anything within the last 3 years, so people that don't miss out, so it's not just this year or last year, it's for the last couple of years. So we've done the SimTech of the Year award, and that there is probably going to be the most prestigious one. It's probably going to be the hardest one because it's going to be the most populated as an award. Not forgetting the apprenticeships and the new ones. So we've done a Rising Star Award. So these ones are, new in. Maybe they've just started an apprenticeship and they're doing excellent work. You can apply to those ones. And then we've got a few more techie awards. So this one, the Innovation in Technology Award, is probably the most appealing. So this one is sponsored by RIB. And what they want to do is, it's more of a competition. So that techs have been working in the background, making their little task trainers or making these
adapting models and things like that. Yeah.
So what they can do is, if they've got a prototype, they can go and present it. And what RIB have offered is they will make it in their little production factory using their mass 3D printers. You can go down there for 3 days and make your prototype, and if it's good enough, they'll actually take it to market.
That is wicked. Honestly, that is
get royalties, they said.
That is so cool. Oh, I love that.
Of course, the technician just needs to give it the name is their surname. which might be a bit challenging for you, Craig.
The journey trainer.
Not me. I'm not going into that. Craig, if people are interested in making nominations, how do they do that?
Yes, good question.
So we've got a website which I'll send to you guys that we can put in the description. You literally just go on there and it'll tell you all the information that you want. Nominations are open until the end of April.
Okay.
All they require is a 500-word write up a few little objectives. And if you're a finalist, there'll be a presentation to a judge of text that I've already got, so it'll be peer reviewed who would judge, and then they'll be invited to the SimTech Symposium, which is in 21st of August, and that is a conference for text by text. But we're also opening it up to, let's say, tech enthusiasts. So it's not just for people who are SimTechs. It's for people that just want to come, that enjoy technology, enjoy simulation, and enjoy the combination of the two.
And what's the date of that?
Yeah, we were interested.
And it's in Manchester.
What is it? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
21st of August.
Okay. See you there.
And obviously it's free to attend, so you can come along. I think we can take up to 200 people this year.
Excellent.
And we can share a link to that as well on the information below the episode.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
We might talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but I want to dip into a little bit more about you setting up the podcast, because we've obviously got a keen interest in that ourselves, having done the same sort of thing. And it sounds kind of similar listening to you, that you saw a gap in the market that needed filling. And certainly for us, we weren't even thinking about anything like monetization or sponsorship or anything like that. We're still a long way away from that, I think, personally, because we're very niche. But we had the same sort of, our initial thoughts were, there is a problem that we've got. I'm sure there's a problem that other people have got. And actually what we wanted to do is create a community of practice to sort of share those opinions. Is that a sort of a similar thing from your perspective?
Exactly that. Every time I talk to a tech, three different podcast ideas come into my head. I'm always writing something down to contact these people. But as always, the hardest part is getting them to come on and talk, because let's face it, it takes a weirdo to like to record themselves and put themselves out there. Doesn't it? Most people will shy away from
guilty as charged.
I think a lot of people also are quite taken aback when you invite them onto an episode of the podcast. I guess they have a little bit of that imposter syndrome as well. And, we've definitely felt that. Certainly, I think we've become more comfortable with it.
Well, as simulation enthusiasts, I think it's evaluation apprehension, isn't it? It's that sense that, like I'm putting myself out there, I'm making myself vulnerable, I'm going to be judged. And actually, before we started today, you were saying you use the platform we're using to record today, and you've recorded the thick end of 70 plus episodes, possibly more. But today, being on the other end of the call made you kind of a little bit unexpectedly apprehensive. Yeah,
it really makes you appreciate it. You two have got it sorted a little bit, because you've always got a guest built in with each other. Yeah. Where actually, I highly rely on guests come on. Because, like I say, I'm 70 episodes in and I haven't done a solo one yet. That terrifies me again.
I think that in itself is a very unique challenge, is to talk to yourself. Now,
a monologue.
So
the simulation monologue,
who can
a soliloquy, a simulation soliloquy
really well. So I listen to some comedy podcasts, and Bill Burr, who's an American comedian, he does a Monday and a Thursday podcast on his own, and it is incredible. If go and have a listen to it, because he just rants onto himself, and obviously he's a different topic, but there is a very unique skill in being able to do that with yourself. I was just going to say, Craig, that we often, when we record an episode, afterwards we'll be like, oh, I was a bit flat in that one. I wasn't on my A game, but we've got that safety net of each other, whereas you are literally sticking your neck on the line.
Yeah, and one of the things. Remember that although you want it to be educational and interesting, so people get something out of it, you've also kind of got to be entertaining as well. You need to be need to be edgy, you need to be funny, and you need to bring your personality. But when you put a camera on and a microphone in front of people, they turn into robots.
Yeah.
They can't help it because they go into this corporate mode. And I've had people on who naturally really funny and warm, and then you turn them on, and it's almost like they were reading a script in their head. And this is where maybe over planning can be a bit of a problem because it becomes unnatural.
I don't know if Tony intentionally just punched me in the leg then or not, but
grabbed his knee.
That's me. Yeah, just to make me feel comfortable. I've been revealing some more vulnerability, which is that I'm probably that person who feels like I need a safety net of some structure, whereas Tony's probably more comfortable with just shooting from the hip.
But
whereas
I end up fumbling more because it's definitely evident.
I like to have some of that there, but I think the experience that we've got now, the comfort with which you clearly do this as well, lets you to be a little bit more free.
But also, and coming back to a point you previously made, I think people initially find the podcast for the content, but they stay for the personalities. And I think once you've gathered that following, they'll be more interested to hear about what you've got to say as part of your, what would we say, weekly update that you do, and potentially moving now to fortnightly, which is a crazy schedule, by the way.
It is. One of the things that I was always worried about is that, what happens when I've got months of nobody interested? But actually, it's almost like a confirmation that you're doing a good job is when you get people approaching you saying, look, can I come on the podcast? Because it used to be me chasing them, and now that's at least slowed down.
Talk to me a little bit about that, Craig. So, you're starting a podcast, you're thinking, I've got to get this first episode on my belt, and you're relying on having guests.
Yeah.
And that's distinctly different from us because we did the first 6 or 7 podcasts without having a guest, and then we went local to start with, and we are still having to go out and find guests rather than them coming to us. So that perhaps is a reflection on how much you've grown in such a short space of time in comparison. But how does it work?
My first kind of avenue that I wanted to explore was to get techs on to almost introduce themselves to the community, because although you might see them, we've got a bit of a WhatsApp group, and you might see names and messages, you don't really get to see them and meet them and get their personalities across. I wanted them to come on and just have a little bit of a chat to me, and because every tech's different, and see what makes them tick. But off the back of that, I would then start learning about, they're doing a project on VR or whatever, and like, right, let's come on and talk about that next. And then after I do one podcast, it gives me 3 more ideas, and it just keeps on sprouting. I mean, recently, what's really popular at the moment is suppliers. The suppliers are coming on with their products, and because people always want to know about different tech, what's out there, how it works, reviews, these kind of things.
And that's often the first route in for a supplier, isn't it? Is contacting the techs so they can request a demo with your organisation, and you're providing that facility for them to an extent.
It's actually started paying dividends really well because, like I say, I get all the suppliers on that. I get to know them, not only for the centre where I work. It's really beneficial knowing people and being popular within the community. But when I asked for sponsorship for the SimTech Awards, the first 5 people that I asked all wanted to be part of it. And I overbooked. I had like 10 on the list, and I had to cancel people because they literally bit my hand off because of the work that we're doing. Yeah. So there's real value there in it is a little bit of an ad. So again, it's cooperative. They come on, they advertise. But actually, all the technicians are getting to meet the people behind these logos and
So for people who haven't listened, and I used this term before you joined, is you've got quite a smorgasbord of variety in terms of the different guests that you have, but you have kind of a behind the scenes, don't you, where you interview individuals and talk about their roles and what they're doing, and then you have like a supplier showcase. You're primarily audio based, but you also have demonstration videos as well.
Yes, sometimes when you're talking about something, it doesn't really paint a great deal of pictures, and especially if you're talking about some kind of software, or you want to do a tutorial. Sometimes a video is the way to go. But again, you when you start pointing cameras at people, it makes them a little bit more nervous. And not everyone has a great camera. They don't have a great background. They don't have good microphones. So taking away some of these problems it just makes it a little bit more accessible for them.
Yeah, we're slightly different, aren't we? Our podcast started internally before it even went externally as a way of us updating staff on what we were doing in.
It was update on the school's simulation reference group.
Yeah.
So we were like, we need to get some notes out to the wider school, and we were like,
we were always bored with reading minutes or don't even read minutes. So I thought we'll record an episode,
create a 5-minute, 10-minute kind of talk about what was going on, and it sort of grew from there.
Which meant that we did video before we did audio. Which, I mean,
because we were using Teams.
We're doing audio as well, but we always were a video podcast first. And then we use a podcast provider, which ironically you have to pay for, and you don't to get something on YouTube. So it's easier to do if you've got the hardware, it's easier to do the video first. But for me, doing the editing is a lot more work. So it's much easier to put something out audio than to then do the video editing. So we probably bit off more than we can chew, but we're stuck with it now.
I mean, one of the things I found the most challenging was the environment. I mean, are you blessed with a room that you can keep set up all the time?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, within reason. It's still used for other things, and it's used for other podcasts within the school as well. But and it's certainly not purpose built, but it is a space that we can use, and it's been hugely beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point where I was set up in a storeroom, where I was soundproofing the windows and stuff. And that's where I kind of started. And then I became a little bit less precious on soundproofing the rooms and stuff. And then I became more in there, I'll pick this up in the edit. It was the air conditioners and the blowers in the roof that used to drive me wild. That was just constantly on. Again, it's, we keep saying that, simulation's not a technology, it's a technique. And it's exactly the same with podcasts, really.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
You can have all these fancy microphones and editing software, but again, people come for the people, don't they?
Yeah.
In the bit.
So
and the chat.
If someone is watching or listening and is thinking, I'd quite like to give that a go, what would your advice to them be? Because like you said, you've done it in a cupboard. It doesn't have to be expensive and high tech initially.
So I've actually been talking to ASPE. So ASPE want to do an ASPE podcast, and so I've been kind of guiding them through the process of doing it. And the hardest part is doing it remote. If you can get people into the studio, it's a lot easier. But I think doing it remote is much more accessible. So I think for me, software is the key. But even with things like Teams and Zoom, you could probably knock something up. And it's not going to be super high quality. But don't focus on the quality to start.
It's about getting your message out there.
Yeah, I think it's important to start and get your feelers out and practice, because that was the hardest part for me. Pressing the record button and starting was the hardest part. All the mental anguish and the prep and thoughts that go into it, and you almost talk yourself out of it, don't you?
Yeah, we've looked back at our first episodes. It is a learning process, isn't it? You have 100%. To be kind to yourself because.
Brilliant. So if people want to find the podcast, and also actually, do you know what? If you're listening or watching this podcast and you're like, I'm a simulation technician, I think I've got something to say. How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can email me. I'll go to the channel. My contact information is on there, and I'll send it to you guys. If anyone, the things that I love the best is people's projects. I love them to come on and talk about the work that they've done. I hate people working in silos, and because if you have a project, that saved you money, saved you time, or I'd love people to share the project and come on and don't keep
the creativity in the simulation network is inspiring. It really is, and it often comes out of I've got a problem. There isn't necessarily a solution, but I'm going to use my creativity to try and fix it.
So if you've done that, if you're a simulation technician who solved a problem, Craig wants to know. So
and you haven't been on Craig's podcast yet
already, yeah.
Even if you have, come on back. I mean. Especially today when there's not as much money as there used to be. We're all doing more and we're doing it for less. And if you can come on, share your project, or even nominate yourself for an award. And
definitely.
Let's take it to market.
Well, we're definitely going to have to take this away and make some nominations as well. So, so moving away then slightly from podcasting, and I guess in a related topic, I'm guessing the SimTech Symposium that we kind of touched on earlier. Why? I think I know the answer to this question, but why Why did you feel that SimTech Symposium was needed now?
So last year, there was a massive shift with conferences for techs. There must have been about 5 conferences that came out. There was a SimTech North, there was a SimTech South, there was loads of companies putting them on.
SimTech Live.
Yeah, there was HSPN, there was ASPE, and all these conferences that were going on. And the Russ and Tom, who did the North and South, they went to each other's kind of conference. It was like, this bonkers that we're creating a North and South divide. So they've kind of got their heads together, and it's mostly run by SimTech South. So Russ and his team have created what's called the SimTech Symposium. And they wanted to call it SimTech Day, but that abbreviated to STD. It got the wrong message out. Hashtag STD did trend for a little bit last year. So they went and rethought the branding.
That's lovely.
Do you know what, though? I think I completely understand having 2 contrasting, maybe even conflicting symposiums. You could see that they might be kind of clashing heads. But on the flip side, it might have made things initially more accessible, so that when you get that those kind of early adopters and that initial wave of interest, it then provides a vehicle for you to then have that larger symposium, which is more centralised.
Yeah, exactly. And again, you see it with ASPE. You're never going to please every single person.
No.
Although having it in Bournemouth is bonkers. Let's have it somewhere in the middle. And they've been very lucky this year getting accommodation and the venue for free. But that means they've been able to spend the money on the stuff that people find important, coffee, tea, and croissants, those kind of things. But again, these kind of ventures would not be possible without the sponsors. So all the suppliers come along, and they're always great and very supportive of the tech community. For instance, Spots have been sponsoring techs to go to ASPE for a few years, and they're hoping to pass that baton to other suppliers. That I know ASPE have also had a hand in getting techs to these conferences, and this year we're hoping to get more sponsors. And so if people are struggling to travel up from the south and need accommodation, there is money hopefully going into a little bucket where we can help techs get there as well.
And is there a theme? Is there a theme for this symposium?
We thought about having a theme, but we went against it. We want to keep it generalised and not pigeonhole. But we are very happy again for people to come and share the work. And there's going to be a keynote speak by Mary. She's going to come along and talk about her career and how she's got to the executive committee on ASPE.
This is Mary Holding.
She's going to come along and have a little bit of a talk. And there's going to be a few presentations, but again, the real value for us is it's networking.
It's that community.
Yeah, and just celebrating the work that people are doing, and they've offered to host the awards, so that again saves the awards money, so we're able to spend it on a few technical prizes for the winners. Although we don't want to just apply for the award, so we're not advertising that too heavily.
That sounds so exciting.
That's a great little
and well
there
needed,
as well,
and it definitely feels like there's a real momentum behind the simulation technician community.
So talking of that momentum, what's it going to look like? What's the future? What are your kind of aspirations for where this is going to go? Originally, this question was framed around the future of sort of simulation itself and tech, but I think if we could focus on what you think the future of the simulation technician role and identity is, I think that would be great to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I hate the word, just tech. It's we like to think that we're more than that, and one of the problems that we have for techs is.
So, Craig, I was just going to ask: do you think that is who uses that term? Just tech? Is it self-deprecating from the technician community, or
it's a little bit? They say, "Oh, I'm just the tech," but it catches on a little bit, doesn't it? And one of the problems that I see is that if a technician is doing a good job, nobody notices because it's just seen as the norm, and it's not until they have a day off or they go on leave where everything turns to chaos.
Yes,
things are breaking. And it has a knock-on effect to everything. The debriefs take longer because, people are distracted. All these other things have a massive snowball effect. And that's one of the problems, is that nobody notices when things are going well.
No,
it's just when it goes.
Exactly. I think you need to get a hashtag not just a tech trending on your, that would be an amazing hashtag for that, because it's so important. Like you say, actually what you're doing is you're celebrating we've talked about the unsung heroes of simulation, and that's it. You don't notice, as you said, when something's working. You only notice when it's not. So yeah, no, okay, fair enough.
I mean, realistically, if we had a bit of a magic wand, I'd love to maybe take a little bit more of the American stance and start getting some registrations, some certificates, some courses that are nationally recognised. I know I don't know if you know much about the technician commitment that's coming in. I'm not qualified to speak about it here, but this is just one of the the things that are supporting technicians in the roles that they're doing.
Who would be qualified to talk about? That's very humble of you, but
yeah, this is Mary's little bag that she'll be bringing, and again,
right,
yeah,
okay.
you'll see these at a lot of conferences coming up.
Excellent. Well, so what else then? What does the future hold, do you think, for simulation technician identity and career development in your view?
We'd probably like to see a little bit more consistency within the role. Maybe some continuity, something like job descriptions.
That was literally on the tip of my tongue. I wondered how varied the job description is, and
maybe the band coming over, because again, and this is one thing that I noticed for the SimTech Awards, is that there's a lot of roles out there that are umbrellaed by the term simulation technician. They have, digital this, specialist, whatever, and they all umbrellas the SimTech ethos, of coming in and working hard, so their facilitators can go away and debrief. And
our simulation technicians in our establishment are, in terms of where they fit, because we've got academic contracts, they fit in this kind of, what is it?
It's faculty
professional services,
and
that covers everyone from personal assistants to managers and it feels
even
like,
senior managers
and senior managers, and it feels like the simulation technician role shouldn't fit in there. It should be in its own specialist domain, because of so many things that they do that sit outside of or bridge the gap between a lot of the professional and job roles that we have in the university. So that need for a job description and better clarity is important.
It's
but
professionalisation. It's what you're describing, I think, Craig, is a professionalisation process that involves both professional recognition, standardised qualifications, bandings, pay, and the kind of stuff that kind of formalises some of the professional development that's taking place in pockets and informally. You and others in the community of simulation technicians are leading that charge. So it's great to hear about.
Yeah, and it's like I say, it's exciting just being on this side of it and seeing the developments and the changes in people's mindsets about what a technician is. And again, you guys spearheading these, again, helping the movement and getting the message out. It's really valuable to all the technicians out there that don't have a voice, don't have a platform, and helping them get the message out.
Yeah, and it's important, isn't it? And I think that's something I've learned about the wider podcasting community, and we probably all listen to individual podcasts with different kind of flavors and areas, but it does seem that just like with the simulation community or the technician community, if you help each other out, you can help spread that message and work together. So we've already said we'd be more than happy to return the favour by coming onto your episode at some point.
Love to.
But if we've actually got something interesting to talk about from your theme, but that community is so important.
To me, I always find there was something interesting. I think that's the key of a good host is. Most of the time they don't know what they want to speak about, but you get a feeling, don't you, that you can prod and you're like, yeah, there's something there, and you just grab hold of it and you run with it. And that's where the preparation can sometimes be a little bit stifling. And one of the things I always have on the question set, so like I say, most podcasts will give like a pre-question, so we'll come in a little bit prepared. The top note for me is, look, this is conversational. This could go anywhere, and most of the time I reach for the questions when maybe it goes a little bit dry or a little bit quiet, when people run out of things to say. But most of the time, questions go to the side, and just, again, don't overthink it, just have a chat.
What a perfect place to bring it to a close.
Yeah, I think so. Craig, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the episode. We'll put the links to the Simulation Technician Awards, to your podcast, and Symposium.
The Simulation Technician Symposium would be great, yeah.
Well, thank you for having me on, guys. Like I say, this is a bucket list ticked.
Well, thanks, mate. But it's just lovely to actually get a chance to meet you and have a proper chat and to connect with another member of this kind of growing and diverse community of practice. So, Craig Dores,
thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming on SimCast.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, buddy. Bye for now.
And thank you for joining us on the episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and we can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye-bye for now.